Good morning. With the help of Hashem, we are learning today's 3 Prakim Rambam. First Pedic will be the final chapter, the 4th chapter in Hilchas Temura, making a siyum on Hilchas Temura and making a siyum on the entire Sefer Karbanos. And we're going to start Sefer Tara, beginning with Hilchas Tumas Meis, learning Prakim Aleph and Beis. So today's first chapter is Pedic Dalet from Temura. We're going to learn the din of a Vlad of Kachin, as we're going to go through all of the Karbanos. What status does that child have? We're going to learn subsequently the halacha of the status of Vlad Tumuras Kachin. Then we're going to learn the final topic of this chapter is going to be the prohibition of changing, of being Meshane Esa Kachin, Mikedusha, Likedusha. We'll see how that's possible, if it's possible, when do we actually advocate that being done, and generally how this is prohibited under a lav. And we're going to learn the beautiful words that the Rambam writes in his siyum for Temura and for Karbanos. Let's go right away inside. Perek Dalet has 13 halachas, beginning with halacha Aleph. Says the Rambam, Ketzad din valdois hakochin. What will be the status, and therefore what will be the din of a child of a carbon, child of kachim? Now we have to make it clear. We're not speaking about someone who consecrated an animal when the animal was already pregnant. We spoke about that yesterday and many other times. We're speaking dafka about an animal that's not pregnant. And many karbanis can be female animals, let's say a shlamim, and you consecrated the animal, and prior to you bringing it, it got pregnant and it gave birth. So says that Rambam like this: Vlad Shlamim, the case that we just gave, and also Vlad Temura Shlamim. As we learned yesterday, you have to remember that a Temura of a Shlamim is mamish like a Shlamim. Their children are like them. Harei elu kishlamim, veheim atzmam kishlamim l'chol davar. In other words, they themselves are brought on the mizbeach. Chein Vlad hatoidon. And also Vlad Temura. Now, if you remember yesterday, we learned Pei Gimel, the Temura of a Toida is also a Toida, but you don't bring the Lachmi Toida with it. Same thing over here. Harei elu yikrevu katoida, they themselves will be offered. Elo she'ein tu'unim lechem. As we learned, she'ein meviim lechem ela im hatoida atzma. Shenemar, as it says in Tzav, al zevach hatoida. Chazal learn all love. As we mamash just learned in Pei Gimel, that we bring the Vlad of Shlamim, we bring the Vlad of Toida on the Mizbeach, bevalodos atzmon. Avol, but if a person lingered so long that the Vlad was old enough, it got pregnant, and it itself had a Vlad, avol valde valodos einam kerevim. They may not be brought. Why? This is a rabbinic. We see, why did the person wait so much time? And as we learned, there is a lav of loy sa'acher l'shalmoi, which for sure one violated by waiting that much time. Now, why would you think a person would linger and not bring the carbon, even though taka, this animal is kachim and it goes on the mizbeach? But in the category of shlamim, included taidam, a lot of the meat goes to the owner. Maybe Pasha, the owner felt he's going to raise them, he's going to delay bringing them, so I'll have more meat what to eat. Mitzvah, but that's not okay because loisa acher. So lefikach koinsin oisai v'loy yakrivim halacha beis. Now v'lat chatos, again, these are one of the Rambam's 4.
It's loy yakrivim, but what happens to them?
Okay, so whenever you have a carbon that cannot be brought, we also learned about it. Make believe it's possible. And it has to be brought. So you have to, so some of them will be sold and with the money,
and then sell it? Okay.
That's right. Now, V'lat chatos yamus, that's one of the chatois hamesos. And ve'ein tzarech loimer, the vlad of a temura, because the temura itself, as we learned, temuras chatos is also yamus. It's left to die. Halacha gimel. Sheichet es chatos. Now we already said a vlad chatos has to be left to die. Here, what happened was, umatzabah ben arba chai. We're speaking about a small animal small, which is a chatos, kisba seira. They gestate for 5 months. Point is that the animal is not full term. If the baby would have been full term, we already said yamus. The animal is not full term. So we get to look at the animal as a limb of the mother. Obviously, only lezichrei kohuna, it's kodesh kachim, but it's part of the animal. Shaval de kachim, de me'ei iman, heim kedoshim. And as we'll see, the big exception of a bachar, as we'll get to soon. Halacha dal. Vlad tumura so asham. Now, what did we learn yesterday? That the vlad, the tumur of an asham, right, has to be sold, has to be yiduachi istoavu, sold, and with the money you buy a carbon oila. So same thing. Vlad tumura so asham. Now, we're not saying vlad asham, guys, because an asham has to be male. Masha'enkein a tumura, the whole din of a tumura is rabba toiv toiv bara. Doesn't matter if it's male, female. Remember, if it's balmum. So here, vlad u vlada atzoi for oilam yiru achi yiplu behen mum v'yimachru v'yiplu demem l'nadavam. However, v'im yolda zachar acha shehikriv ashamai. No, it's you made a tumura. You brought the original. And if you remember, the question is, why don't you bring the animal itself as an oilam? Why didn't you bring it as an oilam? The answer he gave was, if you have the original, you have to bring the original. So we make sure that the tumura is never brought itself. But over here, if the tumuras asham gave birth after you brought the asham itself, now we allow for you to bring the vlad itself. There's no chashash that you might bring it because the main carbon was already brought. Hifrish nekeva la ashamai. So from the outset, that was an animal that was not able to be offered. And there, by the way, the halacha is you have to wait until it gets blemished, you sell it, and with the money you buy a male. Here, v'yolda tirahi ubenah achi ipol behemum v'yimachru v'yavu b'dmei ashamai. So you get the gist that the vlad basically has the same din as the original. V'im kvar hikir v'ashamai, then the rule by an asham is that yiplu d'meim l'nadavam. Halacha hey, vlad tamura so'ilam. Now, guys, here again, an oil is male. Male doesn't give birth, but a tamura is effective even on a female. So, vlad atzei for oilam, as we learned yesterday. No, it's just like the tamura. Harei elu ka oila, veheim atzmam yikrebu oilam. Hifrish nikeva lo ilasai, which lechatchila could not have been offered because an oila has to be male, and the yoldam afapisha yolda zachar. So just like the mother itself could not have been brought, you can't make the child that's coming from the kedusha rishona from the mother to be better than the mother. So here also yira achi yipol bamum the yavi b'dam of oila. It itself cannot be brought. It only has kedusha because the mother was holy. The mother is a female. The mother cannot be brought as an oila, and that's the rule that the derivative cannot be greater. Whatever you would do to the original, you have to do here to the blood. What do we do? What happens? As we spoke in Shkolim, there were 13 shayfrais. Some of them were designated linadava. So Pashat, you put the money in there. Based in the Beis Hamikdash, they made sure makriven ba'oisen amois oilis nadava. Another detail that the nesachim that have to come with an oila doesn't come from that money, that comes mishal tzibur. Another detail is that since they are communal korbanos ve'einan to unai semicha, avol makim shenemer hu atzma yikrav oila, or yavi b'dam of oila, then that's an oilas yachid, which also means that the owner has to do smicha, and it also means that the nesachim has to come out of pocket from the person for whom the oil is being brought. Halacha v'lad hamaiser. Oh. V'lad temuras hamaiser. What did we learn yesterday, Chavre? Temuras maiser is not redeemed as temuras b'chor. Simply wait until it gets blemished and it's eaten to the owners. V'lad temuras b'chor. Uvaldos valdos same atzay for oilam. Same rule. Harei elo lo yikrebu. They will never be brought. They never have to be made into money that's going to be bought. No. Ela yiru achifu lemum, and then v'yei oichlu kibachar uchamaised shenafal behemum. Char will be eaten by the kohen, and the ma'aseh will be eaten by the owner after it gets a blemish. Valdois temuras habachar lekohen, valdos ma'aseh temurasai liba olav halacha zayin. Let's go to the next category, Pesach. V'la temuras haPesach will be like temuras haPesach, and as we learned yesterday, it depends when you made the temurah. Im hoisa imoy kereva shlamim. When is that? That's when you make the temurah 14th in the afternoon, when the original is going to be brought as a Pesach. Then Volada also Yikrav Shlamim, as we began in today's chapter, who Atzma Yikrav Shlamim, because you did the act of Temurah, you made that declaration, even on the 14th, prior to noon, or any other time where the Pesach is not allowed to be brought. So Enochanami, the Temurah has to go towards a Shlamim, but not it itself. So here also, Avalad and Nimkar, the Yavidam of Shlamim, it's a machaya that it's following the rules of a Temurah. Hifrish nekeva lepischoi v'yalda, and oishe hifrish meuberes, he uvelada yiru achi ifremum, the Yavidam Pesach. So here's the only time we have so far, again, as we spoke on in the beginning of this chapter, everything, all of the dinim of Vlada is that when you were designated the carbon, it wasn't pregnant yet. Here, the case was you were mafresh, a female, which you shouldn't have, LePesach, while it was pregnant. So the same rule, wait until it gets blemished, and then with the money you buy a proper carbon Pesach. Now, if you did not offer it, and again, a Pesach, after this man becomes a shlamim is allowed to be brought as a female, then tira he uvelada achiblemum, and with the money, you buy a shlamim. Halachaches. Valdois hakochim that are not born naturally. Either they're born yoytzedoif. Now, guys, if you remember, a korban is not offered if it's yoytzedoif. Or if it was born tumtum or an androgynous, not brought as a korban ever. Or a kalayim, even from two types, a hybrid, even from a sheep and a goat, or a treifel. Harei elu yipadu, v'yavi b'demeim karban aroi lahavi b'demei vlad shalzu. Halachetes. Vlad balas mum. Harei hu kivlad hatmim alochal davar, and v'yikrav kara uloi. In other words, a balmum is not inherently invalid, as we learned yesterday. It's just that this animal cannot be brought. So if the child is okay, so let's say you have a shlamim, that's a balmum that gives birth, even though the mother that is a balmum cannot be offered, but the child itself can be offered. Halacha yud. Kachim sheipilu nefel, or shilya. So you have either the stillborn itself or the placenta. So you kavru. V'harei asurin bahana. And now the final chapter, the final topic of the whole Sefer Korbanos, which is something that when you read it the first time, you say, how is it even possible? You'll see. The pshat is, you have a carbon that you made as an oila, and you say on that animal, harezu shlamim. Okay? So that declaration, you are over b'loises hashanema b'b'choy. Now, even though the Torah only spoke about the b'choy, that lo yagdish ish oisoi. You know, what do you mean lo yagdish? Because it's already a b'chor. Shelo yasenu oiloi shlamim. Even though the Torah gave that by a b'chor, v'hu adin l'shar hakachim, she'eid mishanan oisem mekadusha l'kadusha, doesn't make a difference if the animal, like the example we just spoke out, was already kachim ispeach. Even if the animal was kachim by the kabayas, for example, for here, hikdish lebedek ha'echel. So this animal already has that kedusha. Lo yishana lebedek ha'mizbeach. That is what the lav is. However, here, unlike a temura, if you made such a declaration, the ein loiken alav zeh, because of the rule that you're not loikan alav she'ein by ma'isa. Yeah, we learned yesterday 3 exceptions. Temura is one of the exceptions, not this. Now, this is a base for the next halach. Halacha yud base, keitzad ma'arimin ala b'chor, lahagdish elam izbeach hegdish acher. Here it's amazing. A b'chor, taka has inherent kedusha, and it has to be offered as a korban. But it only gets that kedusha when it leaves the mother. And let me add another detail. A bechor is in the category of kachik kalim, right? Here, if a person would want to upgrade the kedusha of the bechor, let's say to make it into an oila, actually here it could be effective. Because if you make that, then what do you do? So, and we're speaking only, guys. It's only acceptable to do it if you're going. The words here are from kedusha girua le kedusha chamura, like from a bechor to an oila. Magdishay babeten. Here you can be magdishay babeten kaidim sheyivalit. Shenema, because when the pasuk that we just quoted over there from Bechul Kaisai. Asher Yevuka Lashem Lo Yagdish Ish Oisai. The pasuk, the source of not being Mishana Lekadusha is only Misha Yevukar Iyata Magdishai. And that means when it was born, so therefore it's imbued with the Kedusha of a Bechor. Aval Ata Magdisha Babet. And now Lefikach Yesh Loy Leimer, here it's okay to say Ma Shebeme'el Shel Mevaker Azu Im hu zachar hareze oila. Now, you can't go on. Guys, an oila can only be male. Another thing is, if the animal is female, it doesn't have any kedushas bechar. You understand? Aval any yachaloimer that if it's male, it should be zivchei shlamim. Can't do that. Why not? She'ein lei mafkia oisa mikedushasoi kidei lo haneisboi. Even though you can argue what difference is there, I'll tell you the difference. The Bechor, staka kachekalim, as a shlamim, you're not going down. But you know what? The Bechor is something that you have no part of. It's fully the client's. If you make it into a shlamim, then you will get some of the meat. That's considered you're lowering the kedusha. You're doing this selfishly. You're doing it for your benefit. That's not allowed. I want you to know that since you're going from kache kalim to kache kalim, you're not going down. What the Rambam is saying is only asur midrabanan, but midoraisa you can do it. That's called the typical haram. Now you can only do it prior to the animal being imbued with kedushas bechar. So therefore, the im amar, if the person makes this declaration, im yitzias roiv roisha yeh oilam. Now here's gavaldik. When do we say the animal is born? So if you remember, it's really when the head comes out. Padachtoi, and technically it's when the roiv of the head goes out. Now we also learned recently about the whole sugya that ein isur halal isur, with the exception, one of the three, basachas. What happens if the person is saying that at the same time when roiv roishoi goes out, which is when the kedusha of the bechar automatically adheres to the animal, you want at the same time yeh oilam. So if you're making it bichal b'basachas, so normally things could be chalba basachas. Here it's not. Here it's not. Harei bechar, and there's no part of it in oila. And the wording the Gemara gives is because divrei harav, divrei hatalmid, divrei mishayim. Nice wording. Hashem says that you can make a harama prior to birth. The moment it's not even chalba basachas. Halacha yud gimel. Now,
Rabbi.
Yes.
Didn't we learn that you can actually go in and cause a mum on the animal if you want to like just make it not a bechor at all?
That's why you can
like the equivalent of that, basically.
I'll tell you better, Danny. The only time that we are allowed to go and make a mum, just for you to know, if you remember, is bisman, that we don't yet have the mizbeach and bayis shlishi. In other words, the vart is, since anyways it's not going to go on the mizbeach, no one advocates for you to do it. When the Rambam is saying in Yud Beis Marimen, it means that even when there's a mizbeach, you can say harei oilam. Now, halach yud gimel. The ein marimin al behemas hegdish lahagdish ubara kedusha acheres. Now, this technique should not be used in the case of our coming back to the first topic of this Pedic. As we'll give an example, elam hareyu bekedushas imay. So, valdois hakachim b'me'ei imam, they are kachim k'moshe b'yarnu. What did we learn today? For example, that even though avlat chatas is one of the chatois hamesois, but if you shech the mother, right, the chatas is a female by a head, and the babe and the animal in the womb is not fully developed, right? It's only 4 months. Then it's you can eat it. So you can't do this when it's in the mother's womb and say, the fetus is an oila. Whatever the mother is, automatically the baby is. And therefore, because Bukhar is unique, that only be Yitziyasa Shemes Kaddish. So going ahead and making another declaration, just to make it clear, that will be Mishana Kacha Mikadusha Likadusha. Like we said, which is something, first of all, it's not going to be effective, but it's something that you're not allowed to do. And now, again, why the Rambam in the middle of a halacha goes into the siyum, akasha, and all of the, a good sefer has to be written. It's going to fill up the whole room. Here the Rambam concludes Prate Dinim, and the Rambam is now making his own siyum. And to a certain degree, it's not only on Sefer Korbanos, but it's also on Ahava. Don't forget, in Mishnayos, Rabbeinu HaKadosh put it in Seder Kachim. We're really finishing Kachim over here. And the Rambam writes like this, that and that was really what the Rambam spoke out at the end of Sefer Avodah, which is at the end of Avodah. Nevertheless, you should contemplate, make an effort. Well, the fact that he said that a chakma on the paraduma is the charaya, that first of all you see that it's an inyan to try to understand. See, Chabad, do the best. Not everything, it's beyond, it's greater than chakma. The source is the Oibish's Ratzon. Hashem in his kindness brought it down even to chakma. Some of it we can chap. Now it says that Rambam, the Rambam is going to focus on two dinim. Is we're going to give a certain time to that, and that will be similar to the rationale that we give whenever Vahamagdish is Yigalas Beisoy. So the din is he has to add a halachic fifth, Kesev Erkacha Olav. Why is that? And if someone else redeems it, they don't have to add a fifth. The Rambam was putting these two dinim together because Yarda, Toira, L'Soif, Machshava, Sa'adam. Uksas, Yitzray Hara. No, it's the Torah addresses the entire depth of our machshava, and it addresses a little bit. Why a little bit? Because not everyone has such a big Yetzer Hara. Some people have a little bit of a Yetzer. Even a person who only has a shtickle inclination, that also can create a problem. And that is, what is that? It's nature. The Hashem made us that way. People want to get more. I want more. And that means that whatever I have, if I'm a healthy person, I don't want to lose it. And that part of the person, consciously, subconsciously, even a person with a little bit of a yetzer, he's not a tzaddik yet, there's going to be a part in me that's going to want to have regret. I'm losing. And he'll regret. And what will he want to do? He'll want to redeem it. The pachas mishavyo. And that's why when it comes to a person being, we're speaking about Bedek Habayis, Hamagdashas Beisoy. So the Torah says, add a fifth to make sure that if you are the one doing the redeeming, you will for sure give the Beis Hamikdash more and not less. And similarly, which is something that you cannot redeem, Shema Yachzaboy. But unlike the Bedek Habayis here, right, by a Tamura, by any carbon, the Kivin She'eni Yachal of Daisa. So if a person would have been allowed to make an exchange, he would exchange it for an animal that is worth a little bit less. All this is subconsciously even. Now, even the Torah writes that you can't even exchange it for an animal that's worth more. Yeah, because if you would allow it in that direction, then it would lead and the person would fool himself. He would say, no, the new animal is better. I'm making an exchange to the betterment of the Eibishter. But really, it could be coming from this need of having more. Now, by the way, there's a whole topic amongst many Achrayim. Do we find min ha-Torah, the concept of a gzeira? Gzeira meaning like putting a fence. In order not to do something wrong, the Chachamim, that's what they do a lot. They say, don't even do A, not to come to B. According to the Rambam, this is a doiraisa, adding a fifth. The v'hoyehut murasai, don't make an exchange. You see that this concept of a gzeira is also, the Torah makes gzeira, so to say, to a certain degree. And lefikach sasam hakasav b'fanav. We close off this possibility. Shelo yachlif. And not only that, if you make an exchange, now you're going to give double to God. I know the Rambam uses the words kanas. It's a tikkun, because the Rambam wrote on Hilchos Deis that how do you rectify your character? If you have a certain tendency on one side, then for a certain amount of time, be extreme. Don't go on the Shvil Hazov for 40 days. So here, in other words, maybe I'm making a Tumura because I'm trying to acquire more. So the takana is give more. That's going to take away the nature. In other words, it's to subdue the Yetzer. It's also going to rectify your tikkun. It's going to rectify my character. And the Rambam adds, from whom may rachik. It's keilu Hashem is, so to say, far away, but Hashem cares for us. So he gives us eitzos from the distance. From whom we gedoyel ha'etzah, from the greatest advisor, from Hashem himself. L'saken hadeyos, to rectify our characters, u'leyasher es ha'maisim, and to make our actions upright and straight. And v'chein hu omer, haloi kosafti lacham, sholishin b'moy eitzois voda'as. I have written for you, Hes the Torah, in the prominent matters, to inform you, the veracity of the words of emes, so that you will respond truthfully to those who sent you. In other words, when we follow the words of emes, and I'll tell you more, Al-Pi Chasidus, emes is the middle, titan emes liyakov. So maybe going back to the nose, if a person is very selfish, they want to accumulate. So here, when they give, and if they're trying to do something to diminish the giving, the Torah reacts by making you have to give even more. That will bring you to the emes. That will bring you to the middle path. Thank Hashem who granted us assistance to conclude. The Rambam is going to be again the klal at the end. Nigmar sefer chi, v'hu sefer hakarbanos, hilchosav shisha, uparakov a total of chamisha v'arboim ve'elohim. Hilchos Korban Pesach, Asara Prakim, Hilchos Chagiga Shloisha Prakim, Hilchos B'chodesh Shmona Prakim, Hilchos Shkogas Chamisha Prakim, Hilchos Mechusay Kapara Chamisha Prakim, and Hilchos Temura Abar Prakim, a big mazel tov. And the Rebbe used by a Fabreng and the words that we're concluding Temura. Temura means that you're including something else into a carbon, something that should not have been included. Because you should not have made it Temura, but it's Kodesh, which is a very unusual din. So that's Ke'ilu, this whole Olam Haza is so distant from Hashem that one can argue you can never elevate it. And our avodah and the positive is to make from this whole world holy. Not only is the origin of this world holy, because there they acknowledge God's existence, but even in the world where they don't know because of the Shem Elokim that there is a Balabayas that's creating us, the who and even the Tmurasai also will become holy. We are starting now the 10th Sefer from the Rambam's 14 Yada Chazaka. The Rambam is calling the Sefer Tahara. I just want to point out something very interesting, that here you have people that remember from Masechtas Avodah Zarah, Daf Chaf on the base. It's quoted so often, right? The teaching of Rav Pinchas Ben Yair, and you're not going to find that many teachings from Rav Pinchas by all of the steps that lead you to Ruach HaKodesh and to Tchias HaMesim. So it begins with learning Torah, and it brings you to Zehirus, and it brings you to Zerizus, brings you to Nikius, it brings you to Perishus, it brings you to Kedusha, it brings you to Tahara, and then he goes to Kedusha. In the Seder of Rav Pinchas Ben Yair, just to know that holiness is that it is something that comes after Tahara. And here, Tahara comes after Kedusha. I know the Rambam didn't use the words Kedusha. It was Avodah and it was Korbanos. But here you see the Rambam, who has his own Seder. Here, the Rambam is following the Seder of Rabbeinu HaKadosh. And in the Shisha Sidrei Mishnah, Rabbeinu HaKadosh was Mesader. First comes Kachim, and then comes Taharas. This is the Seder we have over here. The Rambam always opens up with the words, B'Shem Hashem Keil Olam. And the pasuk that he quotes from Ksuvim, Leiv Tor, that's the Tara, Barali Elokim, and Veruach Nochin Chadesh Bekirbi. Maybe there's two things. We begin with Tara, And then through living in this world, some of us temporarily, externally, can tamper with that Tara. So we ask Hashem that be mechadesh, the Ruach Nachem, that we always have the ability to reacquire the Tara. Sefer Tara. And Vu Sefer Asiri. Hilchos of Shmoina v'zeh Siduran. Hilchos Tumas Meis. Hilchos Paraduma. Hilchos Tumas Toras. Hilchos Metame, the unique Tuma of Mishkav u'Moshav, one those who are able to impart Tuma to that which they lie on, to that which they sit on, and as we'll see, they become just as Tame as the source, which is unique. Hilchos Sha'ar Avos HaTumos, other than Mace. Hilchos Tumas Oichalim, Hilchos Chelim, and the final one is Hilchos Mikvos. I want to say just that many people have a special geschmack when it comes to these dinim. My experience was that when the Rebbe came out with the mitzvah to learn Rambam, we were then in Miami, and this Sefer Tara, this is all credit to Rabbi Leib Shapiro. We learned very good. Maybe from then on, I got a geschmack in Tara, like the Gabbai who loves Tara. I got it from my Rosh Yeshiva, and unlike Zerayim, that less familiar with, unless you learned Yerushalmi, even though there's no Talmud Bavli on Tara other than Nida, which is in Seder Tara. From the Mishnayos, but there are plenty of sugyas, Rab Chanina Skana Kehanim, and many other sugyas. So we should be more familiar. And this is a choice that when you choose to love it, there's a special simcha by dafka learning these then. So
now we know who to blame.
It's all the Gabbai gets credit. Hilchas Tumas Meis. The whole
Rabbi
Tumas
Shapiro,
Meis.
what do you mean?
I know. So that he gets all the credit. Mitzvahs say achas. Who din Tumas Meis? Pasha. Ubir mitzvah zois the prakim elu. So we are beginning with the first chapter. The first chapter, like always, Chavre, we're going to learn the basic ways that a mace imparts tuma. Another digduk, which is not. I know that I never had a great digduk teacher. That's on me. But one thing that I remember is that when it comes to the dinim of tuma. So there is the source that's imparting tuma, and then there is the person, the object, the food that's acquiring tuma. Whenever you read the mitame with ashwa, it's speaking about the imparting, the mashpia. Whenever you read a mitame with achidik, and it's not only with the mem, you'll see it, mamashvitz, it's me, like e. The word in English, achidik is me, e. It's the one that's acquiring. That's something that will also help. Just what are we focusing on? On the imparter or on the acquirer? So, mace can impart tuma, or we could acquire, could become tame, three ways: maga, masa, oil, and that will be bekitzer the whole Pedic Aleph. I know that we're going to have to learn many other pratim later. But we're going to go through maga. What does maga mean? What does masa mean? And what does oil mean? That will be the first chapter. The first chapter has 15 halachas. I know that relatively it's long parakim. It's very easy parakim. Like when you get later into all the series, every halacha sometimes is another mishnah, it's another whole daf of Gemara. Here it's pashat amachaya, simple, and not only Pedic Aleph, today's second chapter also is going to be a lot of details, but it's very simple halachas, and we have to remember them because everything else is based on it. Halacha Aleph, Hameis, see, meh, mitashua, in parts, tuma, three ways: through touch, through carrying. Now, obviously, if the guy, first of all, the mace is not carrying anyone, just make that clear, right? The mace is a mace. Someone is touching the mace, someone is carrying the mace. So the one, you can carry the mace, you can also touch it. Then you're tummy because you're touching it. The point of carrying would mean, as the Rambam will explain, even if you're very far away from the mace, right? You have 10 kalim on you, and there is a mace on the top keli. You, because you are carrying, included in that will also be hesed, you're moving it, you become as if you had direct contact. And the third type of imparting tuma is ba'oil. We'll learn in this chapter that there are three ways of tumas oil, and in all of these cases, it's called direct contact. That's important. And the one who became tamei, tumas shiva. We'll need to have the 7 days. The Rambam doesn't go into the details of the afar chatos here. Point he's trying to make is, for example, by masa, just to speak it out, is that generally when tuma is imparted from aleph to beis, from beis to gimel, generally it goes down a notch. Now, if not for the din of masa, if not for masa, if the only way the mace would impart is through maga, just for example, then what would happen if the mace is in a keli and I'm carrying the keli? I would become tummy only for 1 day, because the mace has a status of avi avoisatum. The keli will become an av. I am touching the keli. I become a rishon. A rishon is not tummy for 7 days. In other words, no matter what, in all of these cases, you're tummy for all the 7 days. Now let's go. Tumas maga and tumas oil are mifayrashim batayra. The Mimsukim in the Chumash and Chukas. Shenever, as it says, hanoigeya b'meis l'chol nefesh adam v'tavishivas yamim. Clearly, it also says v'nemar kolabala oil v'chol asher ba'ayit mashivas yamim. However, tumas masa that's not written is mipi Shmuah. Nevertheless, even though Shmuah is genuk, enough, it suffices, but we have a kal v'chayim. And on top of that, the Rambam gives his own svarim. How do you know that also there's a concept of masa? So the Rambam writes, v'kal v'chayim advarim. Im nevela, as we'll learn later, nevela is itself enough. So when nevela imparts, when nevela is mitama, right? That means if I touch a kazayis mipsar nevela, I'll only become a rishon. That's called tumas erev. Tumas erev means that I have to go to I can go to the mikveh that day. Even after I went to the mikveh, I have to wait until it's night to become fully pure. But that's called tumas erev. No, it's nevela. That's on a lower level. It's only metama tumas erev. And furthermore, ve'ena metama ba'oil. Nevertheless, by nevela, the Torah writes explicitly metama b'masa, as it says, v'han loiseya es nivlasam. So hameis, that aleph metama tumas shiva, beis it's metama through an oil, like kolchchen, that it will also impart tuma. Now the Rambam adds, "Uman nevela shema go'al tumas erev, maso tumas erev, af hameis." Not only do we know that it could impart through masa, but the level will be the same. Shema goy tumas shiva, maso tumas shiva. The Rambam says, "Ve'en tumas masa b'meis medivrei soifrim." Many times, even when you have a pasuk, it can be an asmachta. Remember that. The Rambam wants to write that there's two things. There's a shmua, which means it's from God, and a kal v'chomer in itself is also a doiraisa. V'yiroli sheshosak mimeno hakosiv. The Rambam writes kiderach sheshosak mi'isur abbas, which is like amazing. The Torah only says you can't have a relation with your granddaughter, and the Gemara Taka says there's no need to say bas. Lefish asa befeirush afilu al bas abbas. Similarly, the Torah didn't say explicitly that you cannot eat basar and chalav that were cooked together. There was no need for that, because since the Torah prohibited befeirush even cooking it, so therefore it was like yesh b'chlal masayim mana kach shosak mitumas masa lemeis lefisha timei befeirush even tumas oil, and tumas oil is what we are using to make the kal v'chomer from the nevela. So kolchchen masoi,
Bishul says 3 times.
Bishul it says 3 times. So nevertheless, the Rambam is wording it. That's a good point. It's not why, but still, why did the Torah write 3 times? Loisavashal, write befeirush. There's no need. Keilu. There's another angle.
Just say Bishul twice. Let's say.
Let's go back. Hanos, the third. Halachigim. Tumas Magam. So let's go. So now that we established that masas midoiraisa, the Rambam with his Gavaldik Seder will be consistent. In Halacha Aleph, the Rabbi spoke about maga, masa, and oil, and that is the Seder of this chapter. Tumas maga amura b'chol makom means bein b'meis, whether you touch the mace, bein b'shar hamitamim. In other words, even though we're learning about tumas mace, well, we just began a new sefer, and we're going to learn. Right, there are many other sources of tuma. So whenever you touch whatever that source of tuma is, you become tamei. But however, you, not through your clothing, your body has to touch the body of the source. Now, what part of your body? Here we don't care. Guys, external. You know what's called external? Even the tongue. Because the tongue. Now, tzeparnov is a bigger chiddush because you can cut them. Shinov, many people have a minig when they get older, they shed them. No, but when you have them, nitma, kiven shehem chalaram laguf, then harem keguf. However, what are we trying? What are we excluding? Now, what's so gewaldig, see here the Rambam puts in the beginning certain pratim that you have to know from the outset. Tuma belua, tuma beis hasasarim. Not the same thing. So let's go. The person took a source of tuma and they put a toothpick into it, which means that you're not touching it. I'm not touching it. The point is that I'm putting it into your mouth, but I'm doing it ba'oifen that it's not touching the talking part of your tongue. I somehow manage that it only touches your body when it's already down in your neck. Means it only touched an inner part of your body. Is not the digestive tract, that's something else. Speaking about the womb, but in a way that and then loy nitma haboileya mishumago said that's not called touch. Sharei loy naga bivsarai. Shenigias panim einam negia. Negias panim. So that's one rule. Now put this on a low shelf because we're going to contrast that with something that is not the same but similar. Many people confuse. Okay, let's go back. Halacha dal. Remember this from halacha here. Krum sh'alamaka. Again, it has to touch the flesh. How do you look at a scab? So therefore, right, if the source of tumah touches someone's scab, they'll also become tummy. The kishus sha'al hakotim, the soft hedalach hairs that's on the body of a minor, not the hair of the head, not the hair of an adult on his arm, let's say, but the little peach hair. That einam ka'ira basar ketzad mishanaga betuma bikruma kasa yes nitma keilu naga be'oiray naga baseir hadak al basara cotton, then the cotton is not tummy. Now chein adam tummy shehoisa by makam the naga hator bikruma kasa tummy. Now I know. Now we're not going to a tuma shiva. So let's say if I'm tummy because of a maze, that means I'm an av. If you touch my scab. If you touch me, you become a rishon. If you touch my scab, you also become a rishon. However, im hoya cotton tame, and the third person only touches his kishus, his little peach hair, fuzz hairs. Why nitma? Maybe tumas meis, maybe sharatumas. Chein lechluch soya. So little blotches of excrement or tit that's on the body. V'chayoytza bahen. Even at that word, midvarim she'ein choytzam alagov. And certainly if it's chaytzas, in either case, they're not part of the body, not litame mitashva, not to impart, and here the chidik under the hay, he's tame, not to acquire. Halacha kshem she'adam mistame b'negiyas batuma kach hakelim mi mitachidik mistamen b'negiyas atumas shbahem. So a keli touches the mace, the keli will become an av. However, with the big exception is the kli cheres, an earthenware keli, she'enoi mi stame elam aviroi, as we'll learn in Ilchas Keli. Now, ze v'zeu klal godoil batuma, kol hameh mitashva, whatever imparts hametame adam b'maga, metame kelim. Adam and kelim go together. Oichlin and mashkin are in a different category. We're going to see that oichlin and mashkin are a lot more susceptible to tumah. Adam and Kalim can only acquire tumah from a very high tumah. Remember that. The ain Adam and Kalim tumah elamayava tumah midoiraisa. It's the most an Adam or a Kali can become is a rishon. So if you touch the mace, magamasa oil, you become an av. If you touch a person, that touched the mace. You touch the Kali, that touched the mace. You become a rishon, and that's it. Midoiraisa, and Adam cannot become a shem. Halacha vav. Now we're moving on to the second category, which is masa. Now, of course, if you carry something by touching it, then you're tummy because of magra. Masa means even though you're not touching it. Halacha vav. Tumas masa mura b'chol makim bein b'meis. Again, bein b'shar hamitam mitashwa b'masa hu sheyisa ha'adam atuma afal pi shalei nagaba. Now look at the chidush. Mafilo ha'ye beinoi. Lebeina Evan, guys, Avanim are not Makabal Tumah. Even a clay Evan is not Makabal Tumah. Doesn't matter. Hoyel v'nasa nitma. It doesn't matter what part of your body you used to carry, whether you used your head. Africa, Brazil, people walk with stuff on their heads. Oyal yadai, normal. Oyal shar gufay. Or in other words, someone else put it on you. Furthermore, on just a little string, right? So it's not on you, but it's hanging from you on something that's very flimsy, or on your hair. And in most cases, it's going to rip. You made one movement, and now you see the flow. You know what the point is? Not daladam is even hesed moving is considered carrying. It doesn't matter how much. So meiset b'chlal noisu. B'chol davar shematama b'masa, metama b'hesed goes together. For example, there's a beam resting on a wall. And on one side there's a mace, which is matama, right? Avi avois, or an avelo that's an av. You moved it. In other words, what happens is when you have a beam, what's going on over here like a seesaw. So when you put it down, you move it. You moved it a little bit. I'm sorry, before it was just a movement. For sure, if you pushed it down, so if you dragged it, yeah, that's mamash masa. Point is, even if you did such a little movement that you wouldn't call that carrying it, doesn't matter. You moved it. Mashahu. Now, guys, remember halacha gimel at the end. Now let's go to something else. So we said, like for example, if someone took a source of tuma and they stuck it down your throat, that's not called maga. But if you begin to move, now you're carrying. If someone took up a source of tuma and put it in the woman's rechem, there's no tumas maga. But the moment she makes a movement, that's the point. Then you're a noisei, even though it's based on sasarim. But now people know they learn so many mishnayos and not so. So here is clear the difference. You know where we don't say that? Only if something is in the digestive tract of the adam or the animal, all those dinim. That's different. Then it's not even called carrying. That means if you swallow, remember the whole din if a caliph swallowed the ring, all these halachas. That's unique. Only after it reaches even the beginning. The beginning of your digestive system is the first stomach. But you know what? It's not in your neck. What's in your neck is taka not matama bimago, but if you move, matama bimas. But if something went all the way into your beten, and therefore, the im taval. Now people can ask the question: how does it get there? It gets there only because it went down in your body, so you became tummy already. I'll give you a better example. I touched it. I ate something, and in there was a source of tuma. That's matama. Let's speak about not God forbid. You ended up swallowing a keli that is already av. Let's say I know it touched me, or I moved it. Say that I went to the mikvah. I'm not tummy anymore. It's in me. Now that it's in my digestive tract, it's not maga, not masa. But to make it clear, but in the rechem of a woman, we don't say that. Okay, good. That makes many things clear. Halacha test. Ain't me stame. You see right there with a chidik. It's such a good cloud. Ain't me stame b'masa eloha adam bulvad. So when I am carrying the tuma and I become an av, who becomes an av? The person, not the garments on the person. Let's go back to this image of Ayur in Brazil, in the north, or in Africa. So you have these people, they're working with 10 kalim on top of the other. And now the point is, guys, that a nevela is av. A nevela can be metama a keli. Which keli will it be metame? only the top one. You understand? So ha'adam tamei mishum loisen avela. V'ha'kelim sha'al yadai kulam tahayim. No, you can't even say it goes down a notch because I said there's no down a notch. That's it. And the klei ha'elyon is because it's touching the tumah. Or let me say better. If you have a kezayis basar min hameis, we'll learn this in the next chapter. That's matame, avi avois. So again, you have 10 kalim. So that's something else. The top keli is touching the kezayis min hameis. The top keli is an av. Keli number 2 is a takarisha. You understand? Going down. I'm going to become tamei as an av because I'm carrying. But hold on. I'm going to be metame the keli that's on top of me. Here you go. The point is that the kalim is not noise. It's only because of maga. And now the final type of tuma, which will be the final topic of this chapter, and it's so good to remember this. Maga, masa, and oil. Let me just say by heart, whenever you hear oil, there are 3 ways of oil. It's very simple, but it's 3 different ways. One is that the source of tuma is on top of you or on top of the keli. You verstehst, it's being mahil on you, or punkt fakert. You are the oil on top of the source of tuma. And the third option is that the source of tuma and the adam and the keli are both under an oil. Let's go. Halacha tumas oil eina b'shar tumas. This is something maga you find by other tumas. Masa explicitly by nevela we just learned. Oil is unique, and the Rambam will paskin like Rab Shimon that not only unique to adam, only unique to a yid. Ela b'meis bilvad. Now, number 1, being sheheil ha'adam oy hakeli afilu machad sheila on the mace. That's oil type number 1, or the opposite direction. Sheheil ha'mace ala adam oy hakeli. How is that? The mace is not flying. Someone carried the mace. Oy, or which is what most people hear oil. They think about the third option, which is fine. It's one of the 3. Shehoya ha'mace im ha'adam oy im hakelim tachas oylach. In all of these cases, are they able to meim halacha yudalef? The tumas oil amur b'chal makim hu shetatame oisek tumas ha'adam oy hakelim ba'achas mishalosh drachim elu echad haba kulei l'oil hameis. Now think about the last one. You know, all the dinim. How much of you has to go into the oil? You know what, guys? Amash, the tip of your nose. Whether you fully went into the oil under which there is a mace, or only some of you went in there. Nitma ba'oil. Afilu hichnes only yadai. Afilu only rashi etzba'isa. And the final example, this is a practical example because when you walk, taka, what goes first is your nose. Oy chatma ilo oil ameis, harei ze nitma kulai. More than that. Now, you have a lintel, and around the lintel is a door frame. We're going to first learn about the lintel and then about the door frame. If you only touch the mashkoif, but in a way where one can argue that your hand became part of the mashkoif, because the lintel is being extended in its thickness by you touching it, then you're the oil, you're tummy. That is doiraisa. The next is the Rabbana. Guys, we learned this together over the last couple of years. Now, the door frame is something that goes beyond the mashkef. It goes further out. So, naga ba'askufa, if you touch the door frame, so we say like this. Mi tefach ulamata karav la'aretz. If you are within the first tefach of the ground, then you're tahar. Umi tefach ulamayla, which means any part of the door frame that's not within 1 tefach of the ground, here you are tamei, and the Rambam makes it clear, not the naga b'mashkev. Makes sense because when you touch the mashkev is already considered the house. And how many times did we learn that the inner part of the doorway is like inside? We had this dinim the Beis Hamikdash kedusha v'chulei. You understand? So the mashkev, so if I touch the mashkev, I'm part of the oil. The door frame, which is beyond it, is a derabana. Halacha yudbeis. Echad hameis. Echad hameis mi Yisrael. Oy min hagoy. When it comes to the first 2, metame b'mago ubemasa midoiraisa. Aber this is a machlokes tanoim. Right? The Rab Shimon Bar Yochai uses the famous Adam kiyamus ba'oil. Atem keruyim Adam. Atem tsoyni tsoyn marisi. Adam atem. The Rambam doesn't quote the pasuk because the Rambam holds that the pasuk is a asmachta. The ein hagoy metama ba'oil. So the Rambam, it's amazing. He paskins like Rab Shimon, but he doesn't bring the pasuk. He says, "Whatever is a Kabbalah," and that's a big cloud. When you learn these sugyas in the Gemara, not every time a Tana says a pasuk doesn't mean that's the source. This is the Kabbalah, like we had before. A Kavul we began today's chapter. A Kavul is from the Yud Gimel Midas, but the Rambam begins saying that is something mipi Ashmur, and then we have a Kavul. And the Rambam doesn't even quote it, and he only says is and he doesn't mention oil. And why is that? Because there we made a war against Goyim. The whole source that you have to be the both tfilas kelim. That's a different topic, but also about the kashrus of kelim. The whole tuma. Why don't you mention oil? Because we had a war against Goyim. It's amazing, a whole different source that Rambam brings. He doesn't even bring the pasuk of the Rashbi. Not only does a corpse of a goy not impart oil, he imparts tumas mago masa. A goy, the only living being that acquires tuma is a Yiddish person midoy raisam. And not some mace. El goy shanaga mace. Oina soy. Hail olive. Even hail olive on Yid, right? A Yid does impart. Hadeu kamishloy naga. And biblically, and many people who try to say the Torah is discriminating, right? And these expressions in Chazal, it's a halachic term, not God forbid the derogatory in any way. In dinim, certain dinim, Yidden have unique halachas. The whole Torah is given to the Yid. Halacha Yudal. However, even though Midai Raisa goy cannot acquire tuma while he's alive, even though a goy imparts to meis b'mago b'masa, medivrei soifrim, that goyim have a din like a zov l'chol d'v'reim, and that helped us, as Chazal say, it prevents mishkav zechur when we know that you don't even touch, because midrabanan they have a din of a zov. Now, elocha b'chol minei nefesh chaya mashe mi stamei. And acquiring while it's alive, a cloud, or mitame it in parts, mitashva uchai chutz min adam levad, and v'hushiyah mi Yisrael. Now another rule: echad gadol ve'echad katan mitachirik mi stamim. They acquire b'chala tumas, even tumas meis, even though it says ve'ish asher yitma. True. Now, sometimes ish means a man and not a minor, but the Torah uses the words nefesh. Whenever you also have the word nefesh, nefesh is men, women, adults, and minors. Echad ish ve'echad hakoten. Because sharei oimer sham, and that is megale, that ish is not lemamayit koton. Fa'al kol hanefashois asher hoyu sham. A nefesh means a person, a living yid. Afilu koton ben yoimei. Shenoga, oy nasa, oy hail, hames olav, anyway, any of the three, nitma, and he's mamish to meis. However, but medvar mamurim that he's a shonaylo latish, avol ben shmoino. So halachically, until 30 days passes, he doesn't have a din of a living being. Nor was then he's ke'evan taka muksa. You know what? An evan cannot be kambi mekabel tumah. Final halacha tezvav hames. It does not impart tuma only. What does that mean? Meguyad is a person that was stabbed many times. This guy is not going to survive. Or a goisus, whatever other cause, the person is in the death throes. And without medication, that's when the breathing, there's the death rattle, a very uncomfortable sound to hear. So when it comes to the halachas of eating an animal, you can eat that from the animal already. But the person is alive. Teitzei nafshay halachically, according to most, is when the person stops breathing, when the heart stops beating. Now, there are certain things that we say the person is dead, which is nishbara mafraktoi, if the backbone is broken with roiv bisara, or if it was not broken but ripped open kadog from the back, or if a person's head was cut off, person was cut, they cut his body in half, in the middle. Then, even if the heart is beating, even if there's a movement, that person already imparts, even though there are certain convulsions, because that's just the nerves and that's not life. Okay. Today's final chapter, the second chapter of Tumas Meis, unlike the first chapter that was very general, we're going to say like this, that when we speak about a mace imparting, and let's just to be consistent for speaking about also oil, ayid, imparting Tumas Meis, so of course, you think about a mace, you think about the whole mace. So now we're going to learn the din of a nafel, the din of a kezayis basar, the din of a nutzel. We'll explain what that means. Ever shenechtach men achai, ever shenechtach men ameis, atzamois of a mace, rokov of a mace, dam of a mace, and the grave of a mace. This is all of the parts of a mace that will be metama. Perek Sheni has 16 halachas, beginning with halacha aleph. Let's begin with the nafel. Okay, you have a stillborn. Now listen to this. I'm not a doctor, but that's a certain very early phase. That did not even happen. Still, metame oil. Why? Because it says hanegeh b'meis l'chol nefesh adam. The Chazal say the word l'chol was extra. The word l'chol, interestingly, is not who the mace touched. L'chol means where it's coming from, even from a knife. Which is, by the way, why we bury.
Rabbi, is this even before 40 days?
No. Danny, that's for sure not before 40 days.
Okay.
And if you want, let's let someone can Google that more. I don't remember the problem of this, but this
halacha isn't 40 days the cutoff where.
Well, I guess the 40 days is concerning the Tumas Yir Ledis, what we learned. When will the mother become Tameya? So aside of it, we learned, aside of it needing to have Tzuras Adam and not Tzuras Dagim, Chagavim, Shkatzim, and Amasim, she had to be carrying the baby for 40 full days. I mean, she miscarried, God forbid, on the 41st day. Also benegea to whether the next child has to undergo Pidyon Haben. That's also 40 days. Are they fully correlating? I think so. I'm not sure then. I'll invite. Now, so first,
It says here, that's the 40 days.
So Rabbi Chaim is quoting from Rambam La'am, exactly. That's the 40 days. This is 40 days. It's all consistent. I know that nowadays, if there's God forbid a miscarriage, this we know that if it's Tzuras Avlad, it should be buried. We don't take it to the cemetery, but some people are, sadly, it's not that rare. Happens. I'm not minimizing, but many people are not comfortable to bury it in their own backyard. So you can give it to your rabbi, and he'll. Most rabbis have a location that their wives don't know about in their bachayim. Shtickle Beis Achayim. You can say Tehillim over there. Okay, I'm making light of it. You're making a note. So Rabbi Yaakov is making a good point that if once it's metame b'mag b'masel b'oil, so if the rabbi is a kohen, don't give it to him. Or if you kohen are going to visit your rabbi, ask him, can I walk all around? So they should bury it b'makim that the people uninvited should not go there. That's a good point. Okay, even only a kazayis and bein lach bein yovesh kacheres. Now, will there be a time where we don't say that it's basar? Yes. But if the problem is only that it's already after the passing so long that it's dry, but it's still, you can still see that it's basar, mitame kemei sholem. Not only that, nutzel, that I will say no more what it is, nutzel, but basar mitame because ice. Nutzel is like basar. You need to have that amount. Ezel nutzel, zeh habasar. Sometimes, see, that's amazing. Some parts of the mace becomes hard, like a shard. Some of them, they become shenimoyach. It like melts, it decomposes, and it turns into a very not pleasant smelling liquid. You understand? So kezayis even means the hard one. What happens if it's a type of flesh that becomes liquidy? Oichet, same rule. But for who you have to make sure that it came right from the mace. In other words, there's going to be some of it that's going to coagulate, and some of it is going to become liquidy. Because if any part becomes hardened, then the liquid that is going to be surrounding it is coming from the mace. What are we trying to get to? There are certain body fluids, we learned this, like the person's phlegm. The person's phlegm is not the person. And it can happen. These, the body expels phlegm, mucus that comes out of the mace does not have a din of a kazayis mepsara mace. So, and nutzel, you can confuse. Maybe it's not nutzel, maybe it's phlegm. So if some of the remains of the body became hard, then around it, some of it separated and became liquidy, that's nutzel. But if you didn't find any other part of the mace that was karsha, that coagulated, then you don't impart tuma. Now the words are difficult. Shema kichai v'nehu. Problem is shema. Okay, so it means it's a high possibility that it's not, because again, guys, normally body doesn't become liquidy. Body becomes hardened, decomposes, doesn't become liquid. Halacha base. Invited everything, but the Rambam is trying to give a logic when you could. That since however you understand this, even though we just mentioned that, guys, when you have a fetus that's 41 days old, it's no way near the size of a kazayis, but still, much smaller. Now, halacha gimel. Now let's go. So we learned nefel, we learned kazayis, we learned nutzel. Next topic is something that's really shaykh. Ever shenechtach mino adam achai. God forbid.
Sorry, nutzel also has to be kazayis?
Yes, like a bus.
The only difference between that and a nefel is the whole body?
Yeah, a nefel doesn't have to be a kazayis. A nefel will be much smaller than a kazayis. A nefel can be much smaller than a kazayis. Even though the Rambam says, I know that issue. Let's go. God forbid a person has to have a limb amputated. Listen to these words. Which means not only maga masa and oil, and afilu ever cotton, because it's coming from a ben yoimoy. I don't need to have the share of a kazayis. Shoivarim elem shir. Shenemar v'choyla sheigal pnei asod b'chalal cherev and b'hadav yedua shedin chalal cherev. Whatever was cut off by a sword, kedin cherev is kedin chalal even or chalal shal devarim. In other words, how do I care what was cut off? Why did the Torah speak about something that was cut off by a sword? Because when people go to war and they're trying to cut each other up, you got the guy's little finger, no matter what was cut off. And a cherev, because of its sharpness, can even cut off a small limb.
What if they can't sew it back on?
So we're going to learn all these details in a moment. Dangling limbs, Kevin. Okay, let's first go define an aver. So it's not about the size; it's about an aver. How do you define an aver? Now, guys, we have ramach evarim. So whatever is considered one of the ramach is considered the aver, but it means that it has both flesh and sinews and bones. If it doesn't have all these three, it doesn't have a din of an aver. Shenemar oy be'etzem adam, etzem shuka adam, ma adam basav given about some ways. Even an etzem, guys, don't forget, we're removing the etzem, we're removing the aver from an adam chai. Af aver men achai, achi kibri yosef basav given about some ways. And why are we excluding avo ha kulya, a kidney? A kidney is a ganze kidney, or the whole tongue. The chayotze bahem. Af api shehem aver bifnei atzman. Lochayim the ramachi barim. Hoyel ve'ein bohem etzem. For this din, they are like a shahar basar, and guys like this. Basar min hachai is not matame. Basar min hachai. Now, chosem mino etzem shel aver kol shuhu. The moment that aver is not complete, oh, aver min hachai, then harei ha'aver kulei tahor. That is if any part of the bone is missing. But chosem ipsaroi. Now, Kevin, this is what you were mentioning before. If you have an aver, the whole aver was cut off min hachai. The aver was cut off. It's an aver that has basam gidim outsomis. And now part of the flesh was removed from that. Now it depends. If this should all basam. That had this been connected to a person, the basam would have healed. It would have healed then. Even though now that piece of flesh is missing and you're not connected, you're not healing. But the imlav, if the amount of flesh that was cut off is such that even if this limb would have been connected, it never would have fully healed, then Listen to this, guys. Metama b'mago b'masa. You have to remember this. It's still giving off tuma because it's an aver shalem. No part of the bone is missing. If part of the bone is missing, it doesn't impart any tuma. But then metama boyo. Ubasar hapoidish minachai altogether tahar. Meaning, even if it's more than a kazayas. So they do a surgery today. A guy has a cancer, and a good surgery, and they remove the whole cancer. Some people can have a big growth. B'chlal no tuma. V'chein etzem beloy basar hapoidish minachai is completely tahar. I don't care how big the aver might be. Halacha dalot. Now, in contrast, aver hapoidish minameis. So here the din is mitama b'mago b'masa oil kameis. But here again, look, guys, if there is a kazayas basar, we don't need halacha dalit. Yeah, anyways, because we're speaking about there isn't a kazayas basar. Any size. But here again, now you can argue if that's the case, what will be the nafkamina between an Eiver HaPoirish Menachai, the Eiver HaPoirish Menameis? You'll see soon. This is so exciting that I'm almost speak out clear the difference. Chasar Atzmai. Here, if any part of the bone is missing, you remember, Eiver HaPoirish Menachai, my friends, if any part of the bone is missing, it does not impart. Here, the Eiver came from a mace. So here we say, im nishar olav basar kazayis, yes. Why? Because of the kazayis. Chasar habasar v'loy chasar ha'etzem. Im nishar olav k'dei la'al sarucha b'chai, b'tamik ha'mei shalem. V'im lavareu k'shar ha'tomis ha'meis m'shen aleyam ha'basar. I want to tell you that even if you don't have a kazayis basar on this, there will be a nafkamina between the Eiver HaPorish Menachai and Porish Menameis that the Rambam will write soon. Halacha hey. Another thing, moyach, the marrow that's inside a bone. The Rambam is writing a certain biological fact. Why is it that if a person gets a wound, I mean, Hashem is the roife, but how does the body regenerate? It's done through the moyach that's in the bone. Hamoyach shebatoicha etzem hu harehu hamala arucha mibachutz. If any part of the flesh on top of that bone was cut off and the person is living, how does the body regenerate itself? It taps into the moyach, the marrow in the bone. And therefore, what are we getting at? The kulis, hameis, kulis is the hip bone. The hip bone has in it moyach. And not only that, you can't get in there. We learned these things by Carbon Pesach. Im yesh b'toicha moyach, enough moyach, k'dei lahalis harucha, then that kulis is k'mei shalim. Not made. If the moyach in the kulis is already not the way it was naturally, it's moving around. When you shake it, you hear it knocking around. So now we say, im yesh boy kazayis, that is a matama boyo. Afapisho at some sasam called sadadav. No, it's this tuma. Once it's knocking around, it doesn't have the ability lahalois arucha. Nervous then, it's meat. So it has a din of kazayis min ameis. 1 second, the kazayis min ameis is separated by the bone. The bone doesn't make a chatzitza. Boikas va'oila. Boikas v'yeredus. Remember these terms. You're going to learn that when you have a source of tumah, if there is a poiseach tefach between it and the oil, then the tumah is contained in it. But if the covering here, the bone is on it, you don't even have a tefach, then it goes through it. Kamoisha yisbar shahamayach kabasar l'chodav halachavav. Ever v'habasar hamedodal ma'adam. You can have a living person, and God forbid there was a limb that's dangling, the dangling limb. Fact that it's still connected to the body, to hide him. Meis adam. Now that the person passes away, harei habasar is taught. Why? Because we say that the basar is not coming min hameis. No, we're being very lenient. When the person is alive, we're saying, it's still connected. When the person passes away, we say, no. The meat on that bone, the meat is min achai. But v'ha'ever metam mishum min achai, v'enoi metam mishum ever min hameis. Now, the Rambam says, that's what we said explicitly. Ma bein ever min achai le'ever min hameis. Ever min achai, number 1, basar ha'poidish mimenu. Or and etzem ha'poidish mimenu are completely taught. The ever min hameis, basar ha'poidish mimenu, and the etzem ha'poidish mimenu is kimifreidoshim min hameis hasholem, and therefore umetamin b'shiyurim. Taka, you have to have a etzem kisoida, and etzem kisoida is not matama ba'oil. Guy, we're gonna have a lot of the bones soon, but it's matama b'mago mas. A basa, if it's a kazayis, yachap is matama even ba'oil. Point is that if it came minachai, if it's not the etzem basar and not somais, it does not impart to him. Halacha zayin. Ubein ever minachai, ubein ever minameis. If you have this intact avid, there isn't a minimum amount. Amru chachamim masayim u'shmoyne v'arboim evarim yesh be'ish. A man has 148 evarim. And so I take back when I said the kol and the lashon is not part of it, because all of the 248 they have basar to give them the etz. And another din ubaisha masayim ve'echad v'chamishim. She has 3 more limbs. All of them are connected to her reproductive organs. Now, kol ever mehen shepedesh kibri yasai, like we mentioned above. Bein menachai, bein menameis. It's an ever shalem tameid and parts tuma b'maga u'b'masu u'ba'oil. However, chutz mishloishe varim yisei sheba isha. Yes, guys, they impart tuma b'maga u'b'masa, but they do not impart tuma ba'oil. Why is that? So the Gemara tells us, because since it says Adam ki yamus ba'oil, so Chazal used the words davar hashava b'chol adam. Tumas oil has to be equal. So those body parts that a woman has more than a man, yes, oil, maga, yes, masa, not oil. You have to remember this. Now let's go to another anomaly, which is not that rare, and that is an etzba yiseda sheyesh by etz. How do you view that? So like this. Big difference whether it has a nail or not. Another big difference will be whether it's aligned with the 4, so it looks like another finger, or whether it's coming out of the palm or the back. It's not on the same seder. So like, if you have a finger with a bone, without a nail, im nisperes al gav hayad, like we just explained, that means it's on the row. Instead of you having 4, you have a 5th or 6th or more. So then we say, Oila leminyan roivei varim. Now, we did not yet learn the din of roivei varim. We have to get moving. Just to say, quickly say, Balpeh, that if you only have bones, min hameis, which is something that happens because the body decomposes, within a year. So if you have the whole skeleton, it's matame. If you have roiv of the limbs of the person, even if it's gathered together, it's also matame, even ba'oil. So like this. It's good to know that this will count to the roiv evarim. If it's not on the row of the other fingers, but yes, it has a bone, but there is no nail. And you should know that even this is only medivrei soifim. But if that extra finger has a nail, then arei kishar evarim givaldik.
249 maybe.
Huh?
It's okay. Forget.
Now that the Rambam holds that it's a midrabanon, because the whole tumas midrabanon make it consistent, and that's a big cloud to remember that the Chachamim, whenever they gave tumas midrabanons, they always did not make it equal to tumah d'oraisa, because truma and kachim, which may not be destroyed when they are tohidim, which must be destroyed when they are tameim. People, we are truma yidin, we keep rabbinic laws, but the problem is that if something is only tamei on a level of derabanan, if midoiraisa it's tahar, truma, it's called toilin, you can't burn it. If it's kachim, you have to wait to ubar tzurasam. So how will I remember? They made these reminders. Also, la heker kedei lo idea shetamasa zal midivreya mishum gezeira kedei shelo yisro al tuma al tumasa not truma not kachim. And yes, you can't eat it because midrabanan it's tamei but toilin halacha ches. Let's get moving now. Atzamay samei she'en alayim basa, which is the most common thing. And just to know that in the times of Chazal, people were buried only for a year. B'chlal. And at the day of the yard site, they would the yoim likud atzamais. And they would actually gather the bones, and then they would bury it with the bones of the ancestors. What remains the longest are the bones. The luz remains forever. This tchias hameis. So now there's a special dinim. Im nikeres pohem tzuras atzamais. If you look at it and you see, this is a corpse, then we call etzamad. The Eilem Atzama that you look, you see it's from a mace. The skeleton, the shedra, the spine, thank you, the skull, Roiv Binyanai, we'll see what that means, the majority of the structure, the Rambam will explain what that means, or Roiv Binyanai. The Roiv Binyanai was what we learned before about that bone, that this bone that doesn't have a nail is included in the Roiv Binyanai. So Ashidra Keitza, Chidra Shishalemam, has a din of a Meishalim, but has to be Shalim. And if the Im Chased Afilu Chulya Achas, Mishwene Esrei Chulya Yisrael Kisharat Tzomais, which means that Kisharat Tzomais means that listen, you can count it to the Roiv Minyan, but in itself is not Matame, guys. Remember one thing. Whenever we're looking for all of these Roiv Minyan, it's only also for Tumas Oil. Hagogoylas Keitza, the skull, Gugoylas Shishalema, has a din of a mace. Maga Masa and oil. The ikid is the oil. The Im Chasera Kesela, Hare Kesharat Somois, Ho Yabanu Kavim Ketanim. Even though they're not together, then Hare Kulam start from the Kasela. And again, the moment there is a total of a sella hole through the skull, then it doesn't give off too much oil unless it's part of other bones as well. Now, Kol Binyani Shal Adam, the structure of a man, remember, we're going Milmato Lamaila. Shtei Hashoikayim, which is the shins, right? The lower legs. We're not thinking about the feet, are not counted. Hayerechayim are the top legs, right? And the hips. The Hatzolois and the ribs and the Shedra. The Roiv Binyonoi Shalmeis is Kamei Shalom, for example, that if all you have are the two shins and one Yerech. Im Chasar Roiv Binyonoi Kol Shuhu, if any, so if you have that, you have the majority of the height of the person through it, even though you don't even have both Yerachayim. Now, what's Roiv Binyonai? So we just mentioned that without the extra fingers gave a man, not a woman. A man has 248. 248 means half is 124. So if you have 125 bones, mitama oil. 125. That's called kamei shalom. And if you had even half, then kisharat samois. And here's again where you can use that extra finger bone. So you can argue, maybe if this guy was born with 8 fingers, maybe his roiv is more. No, it's not. Roiv means 125. That's the number. Unless he had another finger with a nail that was on the road. Then we do include it, and then the roiv is including that. So you could have a person that needs to have more than 125 for his bones to be metama ba'oil. Halacha 9. Now, sharat samas hameis. If it doesn't meet any of what we mentioned, it doesn't have to meet all of them. It has to meet one of them. But if it meets none of them, that means it's not the roiv minyan. It's not the roiv binyan. It's not a full shedra. It's not a gulgoilas. It has a whole of a cellar. So now there's another rule, the final rule. If altogether it amounts to a quarter of a kav, that also is metame. Now, guys, by adults, you'll always have it, but when you were speaking about children, harei elu metamen kames bemago ubamaso ubaoil. Ho yupachos miroiva. Don't think it doesn't impart any tumah. Yes, it does. If the bone has the size of a sa'ira, Mide oiraisa, it will be metama b'maga, it will be metama b'masa. Because whenever you're learning about these shiurim, it's only to get oil. Metama b'oil, halacha yud, hoya etzem echad, afilu yesh ba roiva. When do we say that roiva atzomis is metama b'oil? If it's a group of bones, but if you have you have a giant and one bone, and this one bone amounts to roiva hakav, it will not give up tumas oil. Tumas etzem echad, halacha mipi hashmua. Now, lefi shenamar again, it's a remes. Remes. Chol hanagia be'etzem, lamdu mipi hashmua, afilu etzem kisoira, is metama b'mago b'masad, midoi raisa. Well, lefi shetumasai halacha, harei udin toira, that's very important. So that's a very big klal to remember, that even though when the shiurim of bones is only to also have oil. Halacha Yudalef. Next topic. Now we're learning about the rock of a corpse that decomposes and you have dust. It's not so. It's not the basar that's yavesh. It's dust. If you remember, the din of notzel is only if the person was buried naked. Because if you have the decomposed casket, decomposed tachrichen, no din of notzel at all. So mei shehir kivat somas by kever amsar rakov. The nasu rakov be completely dust. So the din is meloy chofnayim, 2 handfuls ma'isar rakov, metama bemaga ubemasa ubeoil kames. I'm sorry, take it back. Masa ubeoil can be maga because you can't touch all of it at the same time. And even if you went and you took that dust and you were giblei b'mayim, you kneaded it together. No, it's not called connected. Halacha Yud Beis, dam hameis. So we have, just to know that in this chapter we have 2 more, dam and kever. Dam hameis metama kameis bemaga ubamaso ubaoil. Guys, dam hameis meduyek, not dam min hachai, dam min hameis. Shenemar benefesh adam, and the nemar ki hanefesh ki adamu hanefesh hostel nefesh. Kamashiyura is afilu tamsis adam. Tamsis adam is that when blood coagulates, just like we learned before about notzo, when dam coagulates, there'll be the ikir of the dam will become hardened and dark, but there'll be some liquid right around it. That liquid looks a little bit red. That's what we're talking about. That's called tamsis adam. Calls man sheyesh by admumis, as long as it's epis, right? Metama ba'oil kameis, if you have a revius of tamsis adam. Now, damachai, if the blood left a living person, even if it's a person that God forbid was stabbed, means the person will die, but it left the body when he's living. So what can happen very often that a person, God forbid, was stabbed to death? So there's a mixture. So and if all you have together is a revi'is, but that's what Chazal refer to as dam tevusa. Remember that lashon. And yes, mitama b'mago b'maso b'oil ela shetumasim b'divrei soifrim halacha yudalet haruk shoyimut lalamita, and the domei minateif, blood was already spilling out of him while he was alive, and it's going into a guma, and now he dies. So we just learned that midrabanan dam tevusa will be tamim midrabanan. But here, remember the rule that we have also by kashrus, it's called rishon bottle. And you have in the same guma, you have blood that's dripping. And let's say, my friends, that you had more than a revi'as hadam after the person passed away. That dam, even midrabanan, won't impart to matar. Why? Because we say, since it's dripping, drop, wow. Now, now there's a doubt, did it leave the person mechayim? Then you can't even call this dam tavusa. Maybe all left la'achar misa, then it's going to be matami midoiraisa. That's a classic suffix tuma. And you know what we do? Reshus hayachad, reshus harabim. Kisharas feikois, and again about reshus hayachad, not Shabbos dike hilcha Shabbos reshus hayachad, but just 2 people or less. Tamei, if there were 3 people or more, that's called for this at reshus harabim, and your tar, as we will learn later. The final topic of this chapter, the grave itself. If the mace is in there or any other part of the mace, that's matama ba'oil, as we learned until now. So the caver itself will be matama b'maga u'ba'oil. Irakov, he doesn't say masa because he can't carry it. It's the grave, the structure of the grave. Okay, then, and that's the din Torah. Shenemar oy b'mace, oy be'etzam adam, oy be'kaver, b'feidish and chukas. The echad hanegeh be'gagoy shel kever, or hanegeh be'koy salav. That's called a caver. It has to be built and totally enclosed. However, if a person made a temporary structure for kelim, with rabbanim, but it's not built, and then he put a cover, also not built, not affixed. This is the Rambam. The non-affixed top is called a goylel, and the non-affixed sides are called the doifek. Ushneim hagoylel oy hadoifek are metamin b'mago u'ba'oil kakever hashkoyach. So why is it not called a kever? I'll tell you, because a kever is metamin midoiraisa, and here goylel and doifek are metamin midivrei soifrim. Now here it's Shaykh Masa Yaakov, because here they're not affixed. Even midrabanan, there's no tumas masa. Lefikach im garagayel bechavolim. If you didn't touch it directly, but you dragged it with ropes until you covered the maze, or you dragged it, or you removed it from a maze, or if you only removed the doifik, right? Or to put the goylel, in all of these cases, right? If it would have been a din Torah, what did we begin the first chapter? That a mace is matama b'masa. Even though you don't touch it, dragging it, hesed is masa. But since goyel and doifek are only midrabanan, that's the point. And then also not b'masa, they're not completely taught, not even rabbinically tamei. Udvarim shesaim chenes hadoifek. Now doifek is the sides. So like then you can have something that's keeping up the sides. That's called doifek doifken. Also, even midrabanan, they're completely tohidim. The final halacha tezayin. So the shenechrosh bakever, if you know that someone was buried in the field and it was plowed over, and and the bones got plowed and they're mixed with the earth, that's called a beis hapras. And the din is va'afara matama b'mago u'b'masa, and this is midrabanan because maybe there was no etzem kisoida. Shema yesh etzem kisoida. It's not matama ba'oil. The final rabbinic of today called Aksay Suamim, land out of the Holy Land, Afaran Mitama B'mago B'masa. Why? The Nigla, the reason is because there are people that are buried there. Now people jumped at Rambam. Didn't the Rambam paskin that Goyim are not Mitama B'oil? No, they're not. But even Goyim are Mitama B'mago B'masa. You might end up touching. Here you go. The Tumas Beis HaPras and Eretz Suamim and Divrei Soifim. K'moy she'yiz bo'er gevaldi. That was a great beginning.
Rabbi, quick question.
Quick, yeah, we got it.
What about the whole thing about tzaddikim not being metame, their kvarim and things like that? Is that something that the Rambam addresses anywhere, or is that just from other sources?
I don't remember if the Rambam addresses it, but that's a big machlokes. According to Talmud Bavli, it's clearly metame. The pshat, like the Tmei Mace of Yosef Atzadik. According there's a Tosfos that quotes Medrash that's also brought down in Yerushalmi that Yeshua Hagarsi and Eliyahu Hanavi buried Rabbi Akiva. And Yeshua Hagarsi asked Eliyahu Hanavi after he buried him, "Thank you for helping me bury him, but how you bist hakoyin?" So Eliyahu Hanavi responded that